All right, I have a couple things for you. If you want to start by opening up your Bibles to John chapter 4. Our text tonight is going to be John chapter 4, starting in about verse 43. That's where we left off. The last time we were in John, we covered the Samaritan woman, and we did contrast between Nicodemus and the Samaritan woman. And so we pick up in John chapter 4 and verse 43. So stick your marker there, and then we're going to go backwards. So I want you to be able to see where we are and be ready for that. But then I'm going to go to chapter 2. John chapter 2 and verse 1. And I'd like to remind you where we've been. And what I want you especially to do as we think about where we've been is to imagine this in terms of geography, but also to try and remember what happened in each of these places. Do you remember that John told us, let me go back so you can see, this whole thing that we're doing is from John chapter 20 and verses 30 and 31, where John says, I wrote these miracles down so that you will believe. I wrote these signs so that you will believe. So that's kind of what we've been seeing so far up until this point, is Jesus performing different signs and different reaction to those signs. So let's go to chapter 2 and verse 1 and just notice on the third day there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. So the number 4 up there you can see is Cana in the region of Galilee up here. And Cana in Galilee, remember that name, because that's where we're going to be in our text in just a minute in John chapter 4. But that, in John chapter 2, Cana in Galilee, that's where Jesus turned water into wine. And the result of doing this sign is in verse 11. This, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee and manifested his glory, and listen to this, and his disciples believed in him. Jesus did a sign, and his disciples saw it, and they said, there's something there. They're going to believe in him. Okay, so watch the map. We're going to go all the way from Cana in Galilee down to Jerusalem. And the reason why we're doing this is because of geography. When we're talking about Jewish people, especially in this situation, Jerusalem is where the good guys are, right? I mean, the good guys. This is where if anybody is going to jump on the train and say, we're going to follow the Messiah that we've been waiting for all these years, it's going to be in Jerusalem. And as it turns out, that is not the way that things have happened so far. In John chapter 2 and verse 13, after turning the water into wine, it says the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And so this whole next couple of stories happens in Jerusalem. Look at chapter 2 and verse 18. So the Jews said to him, what sign do you do to show us, what sign do you show us for doing these things? So Jesus comes in, he starts talking about some things that make them uncomfortable, and they say, show me a sign. We want to see a sign. And we know it doesn't matter. In chapter 2 and verses 23 and 25, it says, now when he was at Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing. I think, though, when we read that, I think we should probably take it with a grain of salt, especially because of the next verse. They see Jesus doing signs and they're like, oh, we believe in him. It's not the same, though, because look at verse 24. But Jesus, on his part, did not entrust himself to them because he knew all people, and he needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what was in man. So they're coming and they see his signs and they say, we believe in you. But then there's this next thing in the text where Jesus says, I'm not ready to go with you yet. He's not ready to entrust himself to them. It says, because he knows them. And so then he leaves Jerusalem. He goes into in chapter 3 and verse 22, it says the wilderness of Judea. So like somewhere around here in the wilderness. I don't know where that is. And now he's going to go back home. And on his way back home, he's going to stop in Samaria. That's John chapter 4 and the story of the Samaritan woman that we read last time. And everything went really good there. John chapter 4, starting in verse 3, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. So he's on his way home, and he had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, and that's where these things happen. Jump down to verse 39. About 39, many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me all that I ever did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with them. And he did. He stayed there 2 days. And many more believed because of his word. That's probably going to be important in our lesson tonight. They believed because of his word. They said to the woman, "It's no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this indeed is the Savior of the world." So isn't that something? He goes down to Jerusalem, he does signs, but it doesn't seem to evoke the kind of belief that he's looking for. And then he goes up to Samaria, like this is not where you would expect people to be doing the right thing. And these people hear what Jesus has to say, and they're all about it in Samaria. And so this context, I want to tell you why I'm putting such a big emphasis on this context, because seeing this context is one of the things that helped me to get to where I am on our text tonight. I had a hard time. I read through a couple times, and I was like, what am I going to do with these couple of verses? And I'll share some of the things that helped me to see some stuff differently. But this is one of them. So he left Jerusalem, he went to Samaria, and now look, I'm going to go to verse 43. And this is going to be something worth paying attention to, because in my Bible, the break in my Bible doesn't happen until verse 46. I think that's a mistake. I think the break should be in verse 43. Because look, after you've seen what we've done here, it says in verse 43, after the 2 days, that's after the days that he stayed with the Samaritans, after the 2 days, he departed for Galilee. For he, Jesus himself, had testified that a prophet has no honor in his own hometown. That's going to be one of our keys for tonight. He went to Jerusalem, nothing. He went to Samaria, they accepted him. Now he's going back home, and the text is starting by telling us when he gets back home, it's not going to go like we expect that it should go. A prophet has no honor in his own hometown. And here, I think, is where we can start to see the problem. Look at verse 43 through the first part of verse 46. After the 2 days he departed for Galilee, for Jesus himself had testified that a prophet has no honor in his own hometown. So, when he came to Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. I think that you should pay really close attention to this. They welcomed him, but listen, it says, having seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the feast, for they too had gone to the feast. In verse 46, so he came again to Cana in Galilee, where he had made the water into wine. And so here's two things that alert us to. Jesus goes home, and you've got two things that these people are thinking. First of all, they know that he just did signs in Jerusalem, and it says they welcomed him, but this is the words that keep popping into my head as I think about this story. They're not coming to Jesus right now because he's Jesus. He's like a circus monkey. It's like, hey, I saw something in Jerusalem, and it's like, show me a trick. We want to see something. And it's in Cana at Galilee, and that's why we started back in John chapter 2 where he turned water into wine. This is the same city where he turned water into wine, and so everybody's coming to Jesus, and the whole theme here seems to be, we want to see something. It's kind of like that meme. I just now think about it, but I wish I would have put it up here, where you got the little stick figure with a stick, and he's poking something, and he says, do something. Do a trick. That's what they're like with Jesus. They're like, we want to see something. I mean, we hear all this stuff about all these things you've been doing. And so listen to what Jesus says. We're going to skip the part about the nobleman and his son just real quick in verse 46. But look at verse 47. It says, when this man heard that Jesus had come to Judea, to Galilee, he went and asked him to come down to Jerusalem to heal his son, for he's at the point of death. And so verse 48, so Jesus said to him, unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. I do think there's something worth paying attention to in that verse, in verse 48. Especially if you have an ESV. I think most of us in this room have an ESV. Every other English version of the Bible, that's not true. Almost every other English version of the Bible does not say, unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. Most versions say, you people. Unless you people see signs and wonders, you people will not believe. And what they're doing is they're showing you, our ESV doesn't show us this, that those words you are plural. And I can show you that if you want to see proof of it. I'll show you that. But this is the thing. Everybody's coming to Jesus. This royal official comes to Jesus and he says, Jesus, my son is about to die. I need you to heal him. And Jesus looks up and he speaks to the crowd. That's what that plural you is doing. He looks at the crowd and he says to all of these people, unless you see me do a trick, you're not going to believe anything that I have to say. Unless you all see signs and wonders, you're never going to believe. And so this is going to kind of get us started here with the problem. The narrator explains that although the Galileans welcomed Jesus, their motivations were drenched with their own self-interest. This is the key. They're coming to Jesus asking, what can you do for me? What can I get out of this? What can I see? I want to be entertained. I want to see the miracles that everybody... It's all about me. They're coming to Jesus because it's all about me. And that, I think, is one of the keys to helping us see what's going on here. If you want to just turn over to John chapter 6, this is another thing that becomes a theme in the Gospel of John. In John chapter 6 and verse 2, this is where Jesus feeds 5,000 people. Verse 2, a large crowd was following him because, why are they following? Because they saw the signs that he was doing on the sick. And then you jump down to verse 26 and listen to what Jesus says. Jesus answered them, truly, truly, I say to you, you are seeking me not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. I filled your bellies. That's why you're following me, because it's not because of me. It's not because of miracles. It's because of what you got out of it. Look at verses 30 and 31. So they said to him, then what sign do you do that we may see and believe you? What work do you perform? Again, it's like Jesus is at some kind of a circus monkey where they're like, we want to see something. What are you going to do, Jesus? And verse 31, our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, as is written. He gave them bread from heaven to eat. And Jesus said, truly, truly, I say to you, it's not Moses. And he goes on to answer them. And he's trying to convince these people, you guys are way off base here on what this Jesus thing is about. Everybody's coming to Jesus asking, what can I get out of this? What can I see from him? Okay. That's our setup. That's the problem moving into this text. Seeing that problem helped me a lot. And so I hope that it helps you. Next, let's go to the royal official. Chapter 4, John chapter 4, and let's start in verses 46 and 47. He came to Cana in Galilee where he had made the water wine. And at Capernaum there was an official whose son was ill. So ESV people, again, I kind of feel like my ESV let me down on this section of text here. I did not get the plural you, and there's something else. It says there was an official whose son was ill. Most versions of the Bible say royal official. Becky's New King James Version says nobleman. I think that you really need to know that the word literally is royal official. And that's probably important because, royal officials hear things. And they know what's going on. And so this guy has heard. He knows what happened in Jerusalem. He knows about Jesus turning water into wine. This royal official is like, 25 miles down the road, there's a guy named Jesus who's able to do things, and I have something that I need done. I got a son who's sick. And so he goes to Jesus. In verse 46, this royal official whose son was ill. And when this man heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went to him and asked him to come down and to heal his son, for he was at the point of death. I'm going to throw this up there because I thought it was useful. The official in the verses before us sounds as if he is approaching Jesus out of the desperation of need. By the way, I don't judge him at all. I would have done the exact same thing if I was in his situation. If my kid was about to die and I didn't have anywhere else to turn and I heard there was a guy who was able to do miracles, I would have done it too. I'm not judging the guy. I just want you to see that what he's doing is he's coming to Jesus not because he cares about Jesus or because he's into the Jesus thing at all. He has a need and he wants Jesus to meet that need. And so he's approaching Jesus out of the desperation of need, but with little thought as to who Jesus is. As far as the official is concerned, he has heard that Jesus can perform miracles, and such power holds out hope for his son. Verses 48 and 49. So Jesus said to him, this is the you plural, he looks up at the whole crowd. Unless you all see signs and wonders, you all will not believe. And I love this part. The official said to him, Sir, come down before my child dies. I don't know why I like this so much. I think one reason why I like it so much is because twice up to this point, the word has been son. My son is ill. Come and heal my son. And Jesus is like, unless I do something, none of you all aren't going to believe. And then you can hear, he changes the word too. He doesn't say my son anymore. He says child. He says, my child is about to die. And you can see that it's like, I don't know what else to do. Where else am I supposed to turn right now? It might be, part of it might be that I can feel this guy's situation. Part of it might be the word change from son. Come and heal my son. It's my child. There's a certain humility in it too. I think about the Syrophoenician woman who came because she heard Jesus was in town. And she said, my daughter is sick. I need you to come and heal my daughter. And that's the story where Jesus makes the comment about the dogs and the scraps falling off the table. And most of us would read that story and we would be very offended. But the Syrophoenician woman was like, I'll take whatever scraps you're going to give me. Like, if it's scraps from your table that I can get, then that's what I'll take. I just need you to heal my daughter, is the thing. There's a certain humility in it. I don't know. Maybe I'm imagining the whole thing, but I think that I hear. He doesn't defend himself. Unless you all see signs, you won't believe. He doesn't defend himself, and he doesn't make excuses. He doesn't do any of that stuff. He just says, my child is about to die. And so Jesus says to him in verse 50, maybe I think the pivotal part in this story, Jesus said to him, go, your son will live. And this is the crazy part to me. I kind of gave the guy a hard time up to this point. I've given everybody a hard time up to this point because they don't care about Jesus. They just want to see something and get something out of it. And so here he comes and he's begging. The word beg, implored. He implores Jesus, my child is about to die. And Jesus says, okay, he's well. And I mean, what would you do in that situation? That's the question that I ask myself. Like, I'm thinking, that's it? Like, I mean, you just say it? He's asking Jesus, would you come and heal my son? And Jesus says, your son is fine. And this is the part. This is where the man, I think, excels. This is where we want to start seeing ourselves in this story. Jesus gives him his word. It's the only thing that he gave him. He gave him his word. Your son is going to be okay. And the man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and went on his way. Do you remember the comparison about earlier Jesus was doing signs and people saw it? But the Samaritans, I said, we might want to remember that whenever we get to this spot. The Samaritans earlier, it says the Samaritans were believing in Jesus not because of what the woman said, but because of Jesus. They heard the word that he said. And so, he didn't do some kind of neat trick. Look at this. I like this. I got a couple quotes up here for you that really were impressive to me. Jesus' words impose a stiff test. He gives the man no sign. The officer has nothing but Jesus' bare word. But this is enough, and he rises to the implied demand for faith. That's all that Jesus has ever asked for from his people. I just want you to have faith. I want you to put your faith in me. And this guy did it. He believes what Jesus says and goes on his way. And so I come to the next quote. I can't just read this quote. Dave asked me on last Sunday, I think, maybe Monday, what are you preaching on? I said, I don't know yet. I have to figure out this text first. But eventually through the week I sent him this next quote. This summarizes everything perfectly, fine for me. And I feel like it needs a drum roll a little bit because this might be the best quote that I've read probably all year and maybe longer than that. I love this so much. Look at this. True belief in God occurs when the things the person sought for themselves, what do I want? I'm coming to Jesus. What do I want from you? What do I need? The things that I'm seeking for myself. True belief happens when the things that I'm seeking for myself get eclipsed by the God who alone can provide them. So I come to Jesus and I say, here's what I need. This is what I want. And when I leave, it's not about what I want anymore. I've seen Jesus. That's the big part of this that's like, Jesus has overshadowed all of my needs and all of my, it's not even about what I want anymore. I got to see Jesus. That's what this is. True belief in God occurs when the things the person sought for themselves get eclipsed by the God who alone can provide them. The appropriate response to Jesus is not one that learns to find meaning in life, not merely in what he gives, but in who he is. I find meaning in life not because of what Jesus can do for me, but because he's Jesus, but because of who he is. And so that moves me into my last couple of questions for tonight. How are we going to grow from this lesson? There's our text. And the question in all texts like this is, how am I going to be different tomorrow because of what I read today? And so I think I have two questions for you to think about. Are you looking for what Jesus can do for you, or are you looking for Jesus? That would be a question worth pondering and thinking about. When I come to Jesus, when I come to God, what is my faith like? Am I saying, what can you do for me? Why do I come to Jesus? What do I want? What is the thing that I need? What is the thing that I'm looking for? And so the question is, are you looking for what Jesus can do for you, like everybody else in this story up to this point? Or, hopefully, I'm not saying it's even wrong to start that way, but hopefully you move as this man did. You move in your faith so that it's no longer about, I need this thing, I want this thing. Now it's, I saw Jesus. It's Jesus. Can you believe this? And so this might be one of the ways that you would think about this story. Think about it like this. Had this man come to Jesus and said, "Would you please come and heal my son?" And Jesus' response was, "Not this time. I'm sorry. But when you go home, your son's not going to be there." Would that man have responded in the same way because he saw Jesus? That's the question. Is it about what I get and what I need out of this, or is it, that's Jesus? That's my main question and my main takeaway from this one. And then this is another one that I think we should think about. Are you okay with just a word? Look at the confirmation that you see, verses 50 to 53. So Jesus said to him, "Go, your son will live." And the man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and went on his way. And as he was going down, his servants met him and told him that his son was recovering. So he asked them the hour when he began to get better. And they said to him, "Yesterday at the 7th hour the fever left him." And the father knew that that was the hour when Jesus had said to him, "Your son will live." And he himself believed, and all of his household. This was now the second sign that Jesus did when he had come from Judea to Galilee. Whenever the man heard about when his son was getting well, it wasn't confirmation about his son. It was confirmation for him about God's son. That's Jesus. That's the thing that I want us to take away from this and see. Listen to this one. Although the royal official, like the Galileans, wanted signs and wonders as proof, Jesus gave him only one thing, his word. No visible angels, no flaming bush, no fire in the sky to lead him home, no star above his son's bed, just the word of the capital W word. Just the word of the word. That's all he had. And the narrative is specific in announcing to the reader that the royal official believed it. The man believed the word of Jesus. That is, he trusted in who he is and what he said he would do. And that's the point of the Gospel of John. Look back at John chapter 20 with me. That's supposed to be like that whole thing that we're talking about right now. That is supposed to be what this gospel is doing for us. In John chapter 20, I'm going to start in verse 28. This is where Thomas was not where he should have been, and so he didn't believe. But then the next Sunday he was there, and Jesus said, "Okay, fine, I'll give you the proof that you need." And Thomas's response in verse 28 is, "My Lord and my God." He believes. He knows now that this is Jesus. In verse 29, look at this. Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those," parentheses, all of us, "blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. And so the second question for us to leave with is this question. Are you okay with only the word? Maybe you come to Jesus and you say, "I need this. Help me with this. Do this for me. I want to see something." And Jesus says, "Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you my word." And then this is our response. That is more than enough for me. I would love to have the word and to read it and to do the thing that we just read about here in a second. To trust in who he is and what he said he will do. Let us worship God not for the wonders he can perform, but for the wonder that he is. A God who is worthy of worship, even when there is no sign, and even when our request goes unanswered. Even still, he is to us our God, the true sign and wonder. I like this lesson. My takeaway from this week is going to be to ask myself the question, Am I looking for what Jesus can do for me, or am I looking for Jesus? And then number 2, is his word good enough for me? I want that. If you're here tonight and you have come to Jesus because he's Jesus, then right now is the invitation time for you. If you're ready to come to him and say, I see it now, and your word is good enough for me, and I'm ready to hand my life over to you, if you know what you need to do, or if you want to talk more about it, I'd like to walk with you through the steps of what we need to do in order to be right with God and to see Jesus. If we can help you tonight, come forward as together we stand and sing the invitation song.